Okay, now let's go back to the beginning.
The study of history, whether it's accidental or deliberate, is hugely important. Our character, our journey, our prospects didn't just spring up yesterday.
Post-1788 is the new Australia. But the new Australia is built on the ancient history.
Long before British settlement, there were rich traditions and deep connection with country.
Just right over here, look.
This was obviously a real sacred spot.
Absolute opposites encountering each other.
People want to know the truth about what happened out there. I don't mind telling them.
The good and the bad has all impacted in its own way on modern Australia.
Freedom, fairness, justice and peace.
What's it like to be a direct lineal descendant of someone who helped to bring about the Commonwealth of Australia?
Certainly very, very proud.
There was trade, there were internal tariff walls.
It's the property of His Britannic Majesty's government.
Please don't tell them. We're a convict dump made good. We are the most unexpected success story in the modern world.
Welcome back to Government House.
Thank you for having me.
I think we're a mighty democracy. We are representative of a nation that you don't see around the world much anymore.
From the beginning, this has been a land of opportunity.
He wanted a better life for himself and his family.
These were the people who built modern Australia.
No matter how many places everybody comes from, we're all one and we're all Australian.
We are a remarkable country. Had it been anyone else other than the British, circumstances could have been a lot worse.
I'd like to hope that every young person will know more about our history, feel more pride in our country. I'm not saying that our history is perfect. Of course it's not. Let's learn the right lessons from the past and make the most of what we have. In 200 years, Australia has gone from prison colony to one of the world's most successful countries. Testimony is the millions of people who have flocked to live here. We're a country with an Indigenous heritage, a British foundation and an immigrant character. It's a great story, but not enough of us know it. And those that do tend to think that it's more of invasion and dispossession than of living together, working together and succeeding together. So this documentary will trace our story, the good, the bad, the trials, the triumphs. It's a history to be proud of, with great strengths to build on. From sunrise in the east.
This is my country.
Believe
me. Believe me. So this is my country.
Whether you're born here or came here, first class Australian.
Thank you.
To sunset in the west.
Yeah, made Australia home. It's
very good.
Incredible country.
It's a wonderful place. There's a lot of South Africans here in Perth, aren't there? Yeah. A lot of South Africans, a lot of Poms. We need more good people in this country. The 26th of January is a day of celebration.
We love our country and there's no other country like it.
I love Australia. I'm Australian through and through.
Celebrating what Australia's all about, like just everyone just getting together and having a good time.
Freedom, the sun and equality.
I'm a proud Australian and I think we should all celebrate this day.
Increasingly, as I travel around the country, I talk about us as a mighty country. I think we are a mighty place. I think we're a mighty democracy. We are increasingly a representative of a nation that you don't see around the world much anymore.
And I just want you to reflect for a moment on that journey that you have been on. Because today, you've made it.
For many, it's also a time to call Australia home.
Now, we live in the best country in the world. Who agrees with me? Yeah. Come on, give it up for Australia.
It's a great country. It is the best in the world. I always meant it when I said it, because there is a decent balance about Australian society that's hard to find in other countries.
More than 20,000 people.
So how important is the citizenship? Super important.
Yeah.
Like it's, of course, like you just feel like you're part of the community now.
From over 150 countries.
Basically, it's for the future of our kids as well, like we get the right to vote.
Pledged their commitment to Australia on this day. Congratulations, welcome aboard.
Mr. Hong, congratulations. Thank you very much.
Big one, yeah, well done.
Mrs. Wulashi Traditoka.
So wherever you've come from, your story is now our story, just as our story is now your story too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I think Australia is an extraordinary and special country. The history of our country is one of extraordinary achievement on this continent where one's consciousness is formed by the physical world. The light, the beach, the sea, the bush, the landscape, all this is fundamental to the Australian character.
Do a quick check.
That's good, thank you. Come on in.
It's good. Just a camera. Thank you.
Yep.
And clap it. You happy, guys?
Anyone with the right to live in Australia has indeed won the lottery of life. And I guess that first came to me when I was Prime Minister. I think I was trying to prepare some remarks for Australia Day, and I was trying to say something that I knew would resonate with Australians. And we all know that to have won a lottery is to have been very lucky indeed. Now, the lucky country is now a cliche, but I reckon to have won the lottery of life is still a pretty good way to describe life in Australia.
My wife and I are delighted to be able to return to Australia at this very special time to celebrate with you your nation's bicentennial.
The true spirit of Australia Day was perhaps best summed up by the Prime Minister of the time, Bob Hawke.
This is a day of commemoration. Even more important, it is a day of commitment. In Australia, there is no hierarchy of descent. There must be no privilege of origin. The commitment is all. Our commitment to Australia and to Australia's cause, the cause of freedom, fairness, justice and peace.
By now, almost every country on earth is the old country to some family in Australia. Coming from your first old country, and celebrating the 22nd anniversary to the month of my first transportation to Australia, let me say on behalf of all the lands and peoples who have contributed to your heritage that you have the best of us. Australia is its own creation, but in a very real sense, it belongs to the world.
I think the most important thing for us as a country is to better understand where we're coming from and where we've been. How important is a good understanding of Australian history to making the most of the future?
I think the study of history, whether it's accidental or deliberate, is hugely important. You have to understand that our character, our journey, our prospects didn't just spring up yesterday. It arrives because you understand how things happen, what happened, why it happened, what was the effect afterward. History is huge.
When modern Australia began in 1788, it didn't emerge in a vacuum. Modern Australia involved the collision of two worlds, the ancient Aboriginal one and the modern British one. Over time, they would blend into what has become arguably the world's most successful immigrant nation. As an Aboriginal person, you want to preserve Aboriginal culture. As a champion Australian sports person, you're a proud Australian as well. And how does being a proud Aboriginal person and a proud Australian coexist?
Well, pre-1788 is all of this. Post-1788 is the new Australia. But the new Australia is built on the ancient history. When non-Indigenous people recognise us as the first people, you don't lose your 250 years, you gain 60,000 years. And that's how we coexist. It's about valuing each other, respecting each other. Absolutely we can coexist.
Australia's story begins some 60,000 years ago with the Aboriginal people, the world's oldest culture. Long before British settlement, there were rich traditions, trade routes, and deep connection with country. As we travel through this vast landscape, we can sense that spirit which still shapes our future.
Tjukurpa, or dreaming, is about our creation stories, about the morals, the ethics, the law for us to live by, is about our connection to country. It underpins the whole of society for us. And it talks about creation and how that came about. And so the whole of the land to us is significant, is sacred in one way, shape or form or another.
This is Arnhem Land, the vast and rugged eastern corner of the Northern Territory, country that's rich in Aboriginal history.
Well, as a Binning woman, I'd always heard the stories of Yingana, our creation mother. The story was that she came out of the Arafura Sea, and then as she walked onto the land, she created all of Binning's life forms, from the animals to the rocks to the children to everything. So she is our creation mother, and she's quite protected. Shows the sacredness of this.
And this is Injalak Hill, the site of deep cultural and ancestral importance.
How often do you do this climb, John?
It can take up to 2-3 hours.
Well, it's a way of staying fit, mate, eh?
Yep.
It's known for its ancient rock art and artefacts, some dating back thousands and thousands of years.
See on the rock here? Grinding hole, this one.
Gotcha. This is incredibly smooth, this rock, isn't it?
They used to grind ochre.
Right, okay.
Red ochre, yellow one, white one. Mix it with a human blood or animal blood. But we used to use hair for brush back then. We used to put them in a twig, mix it up. Even with the kangaroo or wallaby fat, they use it to mix with the ochre, and then it becomes nice and hard and sticky. And then get the brush and then do a little painting.
Before Australia was divided up into states and territories, it was a land made up of hundreds of Aboriginal clans, all with their own stories to tell.
Just right over here, look, Tony. Can you see it?
Gotcha.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Well, like again, maybe like 900 or 1,000 years plus. Mimi, the spirit, gave us knowledge. How to paint like this, how to hunt. And songline, dancing, just from the Mimi.
So they've chipped the rock back to give it a different colour.
Yep.
And they've done all that with those ochres.
Yep.
Yeah. It's amazing it's lasted so long, isn't it?
Yeah.
For us, in traditional terms, what we believe is that the land was flat and featureless in the beginning. Creator ancestors came down from the sky or up out of the ground, and they travelled the land, and they sung it into being. And as they travelled, they left their spiritual essence in the ground. And when they were done, they either went back into the ground or up into the sky. Knowing those stories also gave us a map of our country in order to survive in it.
Now we're going to go up.
Okay.
The last climb.
The voices and stories of ancient Australia can be found in the rock art. There are some 100,000 sites across our country, and seeing them is well worth the effort.
Again, that female here.
Okay, yeah, gotcha.
Some over there.
Of course, yeah.
Right here. Another animal here could be the goanna.
Right, okay, yep.
Yeah, goanna. But just all the water, that came down, flushing it away, washing it away.
The way I was brought up was that it didn't matter whether you are Aboriginal. If you are conceived on this country, the baby spirit has leapt from the ground into your mother's belly, giving you a spiritual connection to this country. That's what I was brought up with.
This is the first gallery, see? And all the rock is still smooth here too, look.
This was obviously a real sacred spot.
Yeah.
So the artists obviously climbed up there and did their work?
Yes, up there.
That's really special. Do we have an idea as to what period this art is from?
All right, so could be dating back 50 or 60.
Right, so the oldest ones could be 50,000 years old. Yeah.
Got some kangaroo, crocodile, echidna, goanna a little bit.
Some of them are very ornate. Some of them are much simpler. For instance, that echidna.
Yep. Yes, and other than that, everybody was here sitting around, but all
painting away.
Painting away.
It is pretty special. Thank you, John. Thinking about Australia in general, your experience, the experience of the people who you've mixed with, what would you make of the good and the bad of our story?
So I think in all life, there is the good and the bad. What makes us a great nation is that the freedom that we have here. So you've got to realise that you can't be stuck in an ancient world. Cultures evolve, us as Aboriginal people involved. And in order to get to one good world, it's the mutual love and respect for each other.
After the break,
where a convict dump made good.
This was old street level, so this was your last walk out of the UK.
What have convicts given us? There's a sense of egalitarianism, a sense of disrespect for authority and larrikinism, and I think that was carried in to the Anzac tradition.
Our colonial story began here, in England. It's a cold winter's day in London, and I'm heading for a warm pub by the River Thames. G'day, Anthony.
G'day.
You better give me some of the original.
Original it is, my friend.
It was once a stepping stone into our colonial history. So, Anthony, this is built on top of the old Millbank prison?
Well, this was built for the wardens of the prison.
Right, so was this the governor's house, this one?
Yeah, it was always a pub, so it's always been there for the drinkers, but also, yeah, some of the governors lives upstairs. But this was...
Anthony Blake pulls beers at the Morpeth Arms. So, Anthony, what's beneath our feet here?
Underneath us were the tunnels that connected the prison to this pub. They would actually take the prisoners through those tunnels.
So the prisoners of Mother England would leave England here and get to Australia and forever after be known as Pommies.
Pommies.
Millbank Penitentiary is where many a convict was held before being shipped out to the colonies. The prison is long gone, but the tunnels used to move the prisoners are still there.
People thought they were cells, but they were never that. It was about transporting, not keeping people in here for any length of time. This was old street level, so this was your last walk out of the UK. You're coming from the prison to the boats, and then you're going to Australia. They were taking about 8,500 people a year at their height. We have a list of some of the prisoners upstairs. Some of the crimes they're being sent for was nothing. 7 years for stealing a loaf of bread, and once you had 7 years, they were automatically allowed to deport you.
Whatever problems modern Australia has, it is almost certainly the most successful exercise in penal rehabilitation the world has ever seen.
I'll take that.
From this very spot on the Thames, tens of thousands of convicts took ship for what was to become Australia. It was a harsh and uncertain journey. It was a story of suffering and resilience. But from such unpromising beginnings arose a great nation. Life in England at the time was tough. The Industrial Revolution had led to high unemployment and overflowing prisons.
You had all sorts of social problems, so they've started by sending these convicts to America. But after the American Independence War, that dried up. They couldn't do it. So they put them in old ships anchored. The disease rate was appalling. Australia became an option, both as a penal colony and a strategic outpost. And then you had those colonial powers, the Portuguese, the Spanish, the Dutch, the French and the English, still exploring, still settling. And so, one, they were able to get rid of the surplus convicts. Two, they were still empire building. And that's basically how the First Fleet came about. And the idea was that after about a year, the colony would become self-sufficient.
We're a convict dump made good. We are the most unexpected success story in the modern world. We begin as a place with the least desirable elements of another society, dumped on the other side of the world, and being forced to make a go of it. And from there, within 7 decades, we are one of the most prosperous places in the world, with a massive spread of wealth and just opportunity. We're one of the first self-governing democracies in the world, and it's quite extraordinary.
I try to think of what it would have been like for the 1,500 souls on board the First Fleet coming into this harbour all those years ago. Apprehension, anticipation, relief. I don't think anyone can ever get tired of a harbour like this. I'm sure that being here would have excited, even in them, a feeling of hope. The First Fleet took just over 250 days to reach our shores. It was a mammoth journey, 17,500 nautical miles through perilous waters, and with only the stars as a guide.
The most important thing is actually having the information of where that star is on any given day at any given time. So at noon in Greenwich, you need to know where that star is relative to the surface of the Earth.
For the people in the First Fleet, it must have been just almost like going to Mars almost.
Yeah, that's exactly what you would compare it to. That's another world, not a different planet. I mean, you look at this harbour, how this would have looked to an Englishman with no buildings, just trees and rocks.
And the Australian wildlife. It was the strangest of all known parts of the globe. And here, captured at the time by the convict artist Richard Brown. On board 11 tall ships were some 1,500 souls, including about 800 convicts and about 500 Marines.
The big advantage they had was a lot of people.
Yeah.
And they were incredibly skilled. So the midshipmen would have started when they were A's.
Really?
They were actually that young. They were basic, that was school. That was boarding school, you know, and some of them, I'm sure some of them were younger. If you were the son of the captain or the son of a bosun, you would be potentially even born at sea.
Convicts were just over half of the First Fleet, and the ratio of male prisoners to female, 3 to 1.
The beauty of the early convict years is there was a government plan in Whitehall, and it was completely inapplicable on the ground and completely ignored. The government plan was dump these convicts on the other side of the world, these pickpockets and sheep stealers and highwaymen and shoplifters, give them some hose and some seed, and they will become self-sufficient peasants. And they'll be quite happy and grateful, and we can just leave them there. And of course, that's not what happened.
No, human beings are human beings. Yeah, they
From
want
the jump.
to get ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
From the very beginnings, that writ didn't apply. And so over the first 10, 20 years, you have not just military officers seeking to get ahead and make fortunes, but convicts and ex-convicts setting up as entrepreneurs, as tradesmen. If you were a good carpenter and you arrived in Sydney and the governor was needing some work done, you were given a ticket of leave the day after you arrived. You were just made free. And that was the logic of this place. And it didn't respect plans from London, and it didn't respect rigid distinctions.
This is obviously a story about Australian history, and modern Australian history starts with the First Fleet.
Yes.
You're both the descendants of First Fleeters.
Yes.
So, Carrie-Anne, tell us about your First Fleet ancestors.
Well, I have 3. John Small is the most interesting character, really, because he had actually been a Marine for the British on the losing side in the American War of Independence. And so they were demobbed after the British lost, put on the streets, and my ancestor got together with a few others and became a highwayman. Not very successfully. Not very successfully at all.
So he was a losing Marine, and then he was a losing highwayman. Yep.
And There are about 4 or 5 of them, and one was pardoned, one was hung, and the others were transported.
And then what happened?
Well, he raised a family, and I'm descended from the youngest son.
Okay.
But this is the small family, which if you remember in the 80s there was the margarine ad for Meadow Lee, and they had the small family being the largest family in Australia.
Oh, wow.
I'm one of them.
Oh, fantastic. So the small family is very big.
Yes, it's huge.
It's actually, they think, approaching 30,000 identified descendants.
Staggering, isn't it?
Yeah. What have convicts given us? Obviously, there's a sense of egalitarianism, a sense of a sort of disrespect for authority to a certain degree, and larrikinism. And I think that was carried in to the Anzac tradition in Gallipoli and the Western Front.
I think that what happened on the 26th of January 1788 was a wonderful thing. And yet there is a modern tendency to look back on that day not as a great beginning, but as in some way a fraught, even a shameful moment. What are your thoughts?
We were going to be colonised. It's probably an advantage that it was the English.
Could you imagine if we were perhaps colonised by someone else, like the Portuguese or the Spanish or the French or anyone? The indigenous people and so many of the peasantry would have been essentially slaves. Whereas in this country, the convicts came out here, yes, they were convicts and they were doing penal servitude, but there was the opportunity for them, once their time was up, to make a go of things and have a second chance in life. And I think that's a really important foundation of Australian life and Australian society. And today, we should be celebrating that, the starting of this very, very bold enterprise to make a new society, a new, very fair society.
These foundations began with the first Governor of New South Wales, Arthur Phillip.
Phillip's 2 big achievements was survival and fairness. Survival of the colony, they could have starved in the first couple of years. Things were not going well. Fairness, he's the guy who insists from the jump that convicts and soldiers and officers are going to be given equal rations. They're going to be treated equally by the law. They're going to be punished equally if they break the law. Now, it didn't have to be like that, but because of Phillip, it was like that.
I think those early circumstances and the beginnings by Phillip and reinforced by great successes of his, particularly Macquarie, the idea that everybody ought to be equal, and I don't think the early governors, particularly Phillip, are given enough credit for enforcing this egalitarian treatment of people as they deserve.
Governor Arthur Phillip and governors following on from him took the view that, no, we will be establishing something different to what the United Kingdom was. It's so remarkable, it's something to be celebrated, and that we need to understand that even if it had been another group that had come to Australia, if it had been the French or anybody else, it was inevitable. It was inevitable, and change is painful.
The oldest culture suddenly came into sharp contact with what was probably the most modern, the most scientific, the most dynamic culture in the world at that time.
Absolutely. So you got that sharp edge of these absolute opposites encountering each other. But by the same token, humans are humans, and there's commonalities and there's reciprocal responses. And you see that in the very first encounters with the first fleet's arrival and the first settlements at Port Jackson.
Arthur Phillip left England with instructions from on high.
Instructions for our well-beloved Arthur Phillip Esquire, Governor of New South Wales. You are to endeavour by every possible means to open an intercourse with the natives and to conciliate their affections, enjoining all our subjects to live in amity and kindness with them. Lord Sydney, Secretary of the Home Department.
They treated them very well, and I think the edict from on high was that they should do that. And that's the important thing to remember. If you read the instructions given to Philip,
to live in amity with the native people.
Exactly. Now, I mean, if you say that, that's the Tory High Command making it up. Well, they're not making it up, it's there.
You also have clear evidence of mutual rapport being built up between the local Indigenous groups and local settlers. Less so between the convicts and the Indigenous, more so between, say, educated officers and the like, who are more geared to appreciate the total difference of culture that they're being confronted with. It's not all catastrophe.
No.
It's not all violence from the jump.
In November 1789, 2 Eora men were captured and taken to the colonial settlement. Kalibi escaped, but Bennelong would form an extraordinary relationship with Governor Phillip.
Philip, when he came here, he was under instructions. His specific instructions were not to harass or to harm the local people.
To live in amity
the native
with the
people,
native
they called
people.
it, to live in amity with them. So it wasn't a direction to destroy them. They wanted to have peaceful relationships.
There can be no slavery in a free land and therefore no slaves.
That's right. And you think even about the incident that happened at Manly when one of Bennelong's friends shoved a spear through Philip's shoulder. Could you imagine?
No punitive expedition.
Exactly.
He took it as a misunderstanding.
Philip wrote home to say, the relationship is much better now, though they have treated me rather roughly by shoving a spear through my shoulder.
Only a seasoned military officer could say that.
But can you imagine what a genocidal government would have done under those circumstances if the leader of the government had been speared by one of the Indigenous people?
Not all of the early settlers were as benign towards Aboriginal people, but it was a humane, enlightened decency that informed many of the key people. They sensed even then that they were founding something that was going to be so much more than just a penal colony.
Still to come.
It was the first time that white people had been charged over the murder of black people, and it was ultimately the triumph of justice over racist brutality.
Here, through the eyes of convict artist Joseph Lycett,
now I'm going to put my glasses on,
is a glimpse of the growing colony.
Published in London, 1824.
You start to have the very rapid, dramatically rapid expansion into the grasslands of Australia. By historic irony, that is made possible because of tens of thousands of years of Aboriginal fire stick farming. The cultivation of grasslands meant that you had hundreds of thousands of acres perfect for running sheep and cattle, and that's not controlled and decided by the government. That's driven by ordinary men and women who want to make a go of it or who want to settle down. And it is one of the most dramatic territorial expansions that's ever occurred anywhere in human history.
It was in the very early 1800s that the colony, then called Van Diemen's Land, was established first at Hobart and then at Launceston. It actually was remarkably successful in its early days. Farming spread rapidly into the interior of Tasmania. That was really the first place where the settlers and the first Australians came into serious conflict. The attitude of the governor was that the Aboriginal people needed to be treated fairly and decently.
This is a colonial-era proclamation from Tasmania. It's graphic, but the message is very clear. Under British law, settlers and Aboriginal Australians were to be treated equally, and violence by either side would be punished. Hundreds of these pictorial notices were distributed throughout the colony.
That's the basic setting for pretty much all the frontier conflict that then ensues.
We have to accept that this is the clash of two very different mindsets. This is the clash of two very different cultures, and inevitably what seemed right and reasonable to British eyes did not seem right and reasonable to Indigenous eyes, but there was a fairly consistent high-mindedness and a genuine desire to try to do the right thing by Aboriginal people, even if it sometimes seems highly paternalistic, even exploitative and racist. But at least at the official level, it was an attempt to do the right thing.
One of the young colony's most successful governors was Lachlan Macquarie. But from the outset, his leadership was tested by an often fraught relationship with the Indigenous people.
Macquarie faced those problems right from the start of his term as governor, but he tried to turn things around immediately. He was one of the very first governors to really promote the idea of friendship towards the Aboriginal people and to perhaps teach them European ways as a way of improving their lives and to making sure that they did have futures in what was becoming a European society.
When Macquarie arrives, at that time, you're beginning to have substantial expansion of settlements. And so over a few years, the settlements population is dramatically going up. You've got new people arriving, you've got people choosing to set up farms, and they're choosing to set up farms at the most fertile places they can find, where there's watercourses and so forth, which is obviously the densest places of Indigenous population as well. You can try and slice and dice that any way you want. You can maintain as good relations as you can, but fundamentally, there's two different orders. There's two different societies that are seeking and laying claim to the same place.
What's your thought about what contemporary historiography tends to call the frontier wars, but that I would prefer to call frontier conflict?
Sure. My view is to have a war, to have a frontier war, you need the established government of the nation or the state to declare it and to conduct it and to drive it. And that's not what happened in Australia. What you have in Australia is conflict that is essentially driven by settlers of a prodigiously expanding settlement.
By the 1830s, the area of settlement was expanding by the size of Ireland every year. The British government was only too well aware of the dangers facing Aboriginal people and issued stern instructions that the dispersal of local people had to stop. But on the frontier of settlement, all too often, the good intentions of London were ignored.
I'm on my way to Myall Creek in northern New South Wales. I want to visit the site of one of the very darkest chapters in our nation's history. This is Nathan Blacklock.
The Tinga Tigers, are they still playing?
Yeah, they're still going.
He became a household name, competing at the highest level in professional sport. Older brother Clayton is an Aboriginal outreach worker.
Pretty much rounded them all up and ran about the place here.
And for them, coming back here is never easy.
You just got to still yourself, still your mind, and still your spirit. To hear and feel what has happened here is very heartbreaking and still hurts.
Here, in this place, one of the worst moments in Australian history. In June 1838, some 28 Aboriginal men, women and children slaughtered in cold blood by a party of stockmen. It was absolutely horrific. It was utterly unwarranted. Nathan, your ancestor was one of the survivors, is that right?
Yeah, our great-great-great-grandfather was one of the young kids that, escaped.
The Blacklocks have a direct connection to the Myall Creek massacre.
When you come out, you can actually feel the energy, you can feel it.
On this day in June of 1838, a group of 11 armed mounted stockmen led about 28 Aboriginal men, women and children away from the huts where these Aboriginal people had been camped, where they were brutally murdered by sword and by being trampled on by horses. Then organised for the bodies to be burnt to try and hide the evidence of what had happened. Now, unbeknown to the white armed stockman, one of the two Aboriginal employees on the station followed at a distance, hidden in the bush, and actually witnessed the massacre.
People want to know the truth about what happened out there. I don't mind telling them.
This is local elder Auntie Sue Blacklock, mother to Clayton and Nathan.
It was my great-great-grandfather and uncle that got away, that ran to Kira Station, and that's where they found refuge.
Thanks to that eyewitness account, within a few weeks, news of the massacre reached Governor George Gipps in Sydney.
Governor Gipps gave instructions to conduct an investigation to arrest perpetrators if he could and bring them to Sydney to face justice.
The prosecution at the trial was led by Attorney General John Plunkett.
He saw this as an opportunity to show that British law was there to protect everybody. Everybody was equal before the law, no matter what their religion, no matter what their race. So it went to trial. It was a highly controversial trial. Most of white colonial society was horrified that these men had been put on trial when most of colonial society thought they were just doing what the landowners wanted them to do. They were protecting the pastoral interests of the colony. So most of the newspapers, the military, the landowners, the emancipated convicts were all against it.
Here's an excerpt from a Sydney Herald from that time. We say to the colonists, since the government makes no adequate exertion to protect you, protect yourselves. The editorial goes on to say, do to them as you would to any white robbers or murderers. Shoot them dead if you can.
11 men were tracked down and charged over the massacre of some 28 Aboriginal men, women and children. Despite a strong case, the jury refused to convict, but the Attorney General, John Plunkett, didn't give up. He brought fresh charges against 7 of the men who were ultimately convicted, and despite settler outrage, subsequently hanged. It was the first time that white people had been charged over the murder of black people, and it was ultimately the triumph of justice over racist brutality.
What does that say about British justice at its best?
I think it shows that British justice was able to show that it was there to protect everyone at the time. Plunkett hoped that it would discourage future massacres. What it really did was it sent them underground. So it didn't stop the massacres. The massacres went on.
Some academics claim that there were over 400 massacres around the country, but almost none of them were as well documented as Myall Creek. There's no doubt frontier life was brutal and dangerous. That violence was rarely punished, and the last known massacre took place at Coniston in the Northern Territory as recently as 1928.
It wasn't systematic, it wasn't planned, it wasn't government authorised, and governors consistently, once conflict started to inevitably build, did everything they could to try and stop that.
In our country's history, there's so much more that we can learn. And yes, let's talk about the terrible things that occurred, because we need to learn about all of that. And we need to understand that our country's foundations were based on equality. We are a remarkable country because of the way that our history has played out. And circumstances could have been a lot worse for Australia's first people had it been anyone else other than the British.
For more than 2 centuries, people have been coming from around the world to share this ancient continent with the first Australians. It hasn't been easy. There's been misunderstanding, injustice and violence. But over time, respect and understanding has grown to produce something quite remarkable, a country that is free, fair and full of promise. Our history is complex, but we can't build a future that's divided. Our challenge and our opportunity is to build a country where we can all walk forward together, proud of what's been achieved and of all we should still become.
In the next episode of Australia, A History.
And in that moment, a new nation, Australia, was born.
He just wanted a better life for himself and his family.
Don't be nervous, mate.
It's a great country, giving everyone a fair go.
Lovely to see you.
Australia opened its doors for us and accepted us, gave us the opportunity to rebuild.
Their courage, their resilience and their faith in the future laid the foundations of the country we've become.
It's lovely that she welcomes you here today.
From ancient land to great democracy, former Prime Minister Tony Abbott offers a fresh and honest account of our rich history and how it shaped modern Australia. On sale now.
Modern Australia was never a grand design.
It was the spontaneous product of all those individuals and families looking to make a home or to keep one, to strike it rich, to find new beginnings or to hold on to what they had. In this episode,
Tom.
Tony, come on in.
Our journey back in time continues.
Look at it. Hallelujah.
He just wanted a better life for himself and his family.
From our founding fathers.
His party was actually really upset by this.
to newcomers on an ancient land.
Australia opened its doors for us and accepted us, gave us the opportunity to rebuild.
And the wool, gold and rebellion that forged a new nation.
As Australia grew, brave men and women, following in the footsteps of the explorers, opened up the vast inland. They carved a living from the land. We owe them so much. Their courage, their resilience, and their faith in the future laid the foundations of the country we've become.
Welcome.
Hi Melanie, how are you? Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too. Oh,
Really
it's a
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Welcome to Ohio. Come in.
So Melanie, thanks. It's wonderful to be here. I feel very thrilled to be in these beautiful surroundings. Tell me a bit about the Nivesons here in the New England.
Well, Tony, the Nivesons are kind of symptomatic of Britain, Scotland in particular, in late 1820s, 1830s. It's a period of change. I think they heard that there were good opportunities here.
Melanie Oppenheimer is a respected academic and historian. But for her, this story is also personal.
So this is the man, this is Abraham Niveson, my great-great-grandfather.
Melanie is a descendant of the Niveson farming family, whose roots in the New South Wales high country around here stretch back nearly 200 years.
Abraham and Mary Niveson got married and decided that they were going to emigrate to Australia, to New South Wales. And I think he just wanted a better life for himself and his family, that this is a land of opportunity, which is the story of Australian immigrants.
Of course.
Leaving behind the poverty, crime and social unrest of 19th century Britain, Abraham and Mary Niveson carved out a new life here at Ohio Station in the New England district. It was around this time that Australia's pastoral boom really gathered pace.
He's not the first white settler up here, and he buys the right to graze his sheep. And within a very short space of time, they seemed to be very successful. The next generation, J.A. Niveson, he had 11 children, and they just sort of settled all the way up the valley. Was it now 7 generations later?
This is Yalgoo Station. And today it's more sheep work for Jock Niveson and daughter Eliza. Their farm is just up the road from Ohio Homestead and cousin Melanie.
So how many sheep are just in the immediate environs here?
2,800.
It's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
How many sheep you got on the property?
20,000 roughly, yeah, is what we share.
When Arthur Phillip and the First Fleet arrived on January the 26th, 1788, among their cargo was a modest flock of 44 sheep. It was a struggle at first, but the arrival of a dozen or so hardy South African merinos changed everything. By the 1830s, Britain's Industrial Revolution was well underway. Its textile industry was booming, which meant an explosion in demand for Australian wool. It would become the young colony's first big export industry.
For the first time in human history, you had a nation emerging as an industrial powerhouse, which is Britain, in the 1830s and 40s, and the demand for wool for these new factories was enormous.
What we were thinking, Tony might just take most of the wool off, and he'll leave a couple of nice long blows for you, mate.
I'll just do what best I can, all right?
Yep.
Okay.
It's actually a thicker comb, which leaves a little bit more water for winter.
As the wool left the sheep's back and made its way to the mills of Britain, it carried with it a new kind of prosperity.
Okay, so I need to get closer to him so he gets a nice fine cut.
Keeping them comfortable is the trick.
I bet. Don't be nervous, mate. I think he thought his throat was going to get cut then. Back you go. In with your mates. Come on.
He's done this before. Okay, come on. Well, anyone who's been in a party room knows what a herd of sheep is like.
For the convicts, emancipists, workers and settlers, sheep and wool became the economic bedrock of New South Wales. Free settlers started to pour in. And before long, they outnumbered the emancipists.
Australia is plugged into a global economy, and that is driving a dramatic push for expansion, pushing out, always pushing out, beyond the settled regions in the 1820s and 30s and 40s. But then gold is discovered. It's got a massive economic impact in that the population just something like quadruples. It prodigiously expands in a matter of decades.
The discovery of gold brought a vast influx of immigrants from all over the world, plus untold wealth to the new colonies. But far from heralding the collapse of the established order, the gold rush merely accelerated the move to responsible self-government.
We're on the east side of Ballarat. Back in the day, in the 1850s and 60s, was awash with miners looking for gold.
The landscape must have been so different then, because it would have been absolutely dotted with diggings of one sort or another, wouldn't it?
It was. It was just turned over. It looked like a battlefield from World War I.
We're deep in the heart of Victoria's gold country.
We're trying to follow along some of the main ridgelines and gullies where the early miners were mining. So we're going to go back to where those miners were and where they prospected and dug up ground.
Geologist Andrew Bales is taking me prospecting.
And it's the journey, it's the adventure.
Hoping to find the precious metal that became a big turning point in our history.
Tony, we pulled out some maps to show you, show where the gold diggings are and where the miners actually worked.
Looking up here, would there be a dozen, 2 dozen people?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they'd be in front of us. You'd nearly have people hunting us off, Tony. They'd say, you guys only just got here.
Yeah.
It's ta-ta, go find your own patch.
Okay.
It was quite a competitive
I
period.
bet.
You know, everyone held their ground very tightly. The Europeans worked as small partners, together 1 and 2. Then the Chinese came in as well, and they worked as more consortia.
Yeah.
Looking at this plan, I've got a spot, I think, looking along this, that I reckon we've got a good chance of finding something.
Let's see if we can strike it rich.
I reckon there's a good chance.
The gold rushes, beginning most monumental in the 1850s, is one of the 3 or 4 most transformational events in Australian history. By the 1860s, Australia is one of, if not the most urbanised nations in the world.
The discovery of gold caught the attention of the world. This is how it was described by a publication in London in 1863.
ours lies on the surface, and after a shower of rain, you may see it with the naked eye. The gold is found all over the country nearly, and there is enough to satisfy, reasonably, all the people that may come.
All right, grab a handful there, Tony. Right, split half of it into the other hand.
Yeah.
So it's a 50-50 elimination. Try one hand over the coil now. Not in that hand, so chuck that one away. Now it's in there, so split it again. Trying to get it down to a point you can find it.
Gotcha.
Look
at it.
Hallelujah. Well,
More rusty old iron.
We should be an iron ore.
The gold rush came at a time of significant political change here in Australia. On the 1st of July 1851, Victoria separated from New South Wales to become its own colony. It soon had the biggest population in the land, all because of this.
Aha. Aha.
That's a different colour than lead. What do you think? What do you think that is?
Gee whiz.
Wow, how bright is that?
Yeah, it's really coming up now, isn't it,
Isn't it? What a lovely piece. And it is so deep, the colour, isn't it? It's really, Have you got a little tingling of gold fever? I think that's a really nice find. We might have to hit the pub on that.
We'd better.
Yeah, I think so.
Gold produced so much economic spread of prosperity for ordinary people at the same time as it's brought people with new ideas about democracy and put them in a field where it can be tried out without great resistance. For the first time ever, you had people of a society that was dominantly from Europe and from Britain encountering the Celestials, people from Chinese civilization. And before the 19th century, this was not just unheard of, but basically unthinkable.
The gold rush really transformed Australia. There was a massive, massive increase in our population and a huge increase in our economic sophistication. It's really in the gold rush era that the lineaments of modern Australia first start to become apparent.
Yeah, Tony, you've come to the centre of gold here, so I've got something to show you.
Okay.
You'd probably be impressed with this. So that's the shiny stuff.
Gee, it sure is.
David Sigton loves his gold.
So that's probably 95 or 96% pure.
And this handful is worth about $7,000.
So this is what attracted hundreds of thousands of people to this part of Victoria and to much of Australia.
All of Australia.
Incredible, isn't it? And to think that along with sheep, this was the foundation of the wealth of our country for so long.
Exactly.
In the early 1850s, Victoria's goldfields were booming. Seeking to cash in on the action, the colony brought in a set of regulations for the gold diggers. The gold would remain the property of the Crown, and they had to pay a licence fee to mine it.
They were pushed into a corner in Ballarat and they were trying to dig for gold. Just imagine being 100 feet down a narrow shaft, trying to find a bit of gold. There's water coming in everywhere. And the police are upstairs going berserk. Where's your licence? You've got to come up, talk with them. And if you haven't got it, they couple you to a log or take you off to the lockup. It got out of hand.
Relations between the miners and the authorities grew worse. It led to a deadly confrontation on the 3rd of December 1854 that became known as the Eureka Stockade Rebellion.
Tell us about the government's attempts to regulate the goldfields and to tax the miners. How did that evolve into the Eureka Stockade?
Well, the Eureka Stockade was really a rebellion of a melting pot of people from all different countries. Well, it was really a rebellion against what they saw as unfair British taxes. The policing of the mining tax at the time was very, very brutal. And these were very, very tough times. And you were dealing with people who had come to this country with, a lot of them, with nothing. The police and the government in Victoria was treating them extremely harshly.
The miners had built a stockade near Ballarat. Early on a Sunday morning, hundreds of troops and police stormed the fortress. In the space of just 15 minutes, some 30 miners and 5 soldiers were dead.
For the radical left, it's a symbol of rebellion, but for the conservative right, it's a sign that the miners wanted the traditional rights of Englishmen. It was almost like a small business revolt against heavy-handed governments.
Eureka's long been contested, but ultimately it's this wonderful foundational story of Australian democracy. In their striving to get rid of that miners' licence, they were really seeking for, something for the taxation that they were paying, which was the ability to be represented in Parliament, of course, the ability to vote, and the ability to buy land.
A handful of the miners were arrested and tried for treason. The jury refused to convict them.
The brutal way in which the military and police attacked and killed the miners, it just really divided the community. So at the point of the treason trials, there was exuberance in the streets of Melbourne when the rebels were freed.
Here in the Ballarat Old Cemetery, together in death, are the miners who died for freedom and the soldiers who died at duty's call, all patriots in their own way.
The rebellion was led by the Irish miner, Peter Lalor.
Tell us about Peter Lalor.
Yeah.
And what does that say about the nature of Australia?
Here was a man who put up an armed defence against what he saw as gross injustice, and history has shown that it was a gross injustice. And yet he managed to not just be acquitted from those charges, but to end up as Speaker of the House in the Victorian Parliament. So it gives you an idea that even in the 1850s, this was a society that was building towards being a very, very fair, balanced and just society.
Peter Lalor, Eureka rebel, who went on to become Speaker of the Victorian Parliament, only in Australia. So this is the original,
after the break,
land of opportunity.
He hadn't told them
a captain's call, if you like. And in that moment, a new nation, Australia, was born.
The formal achievement of Australian nationhood was a triumph of politics at its best. A remarkably talented group of leaders managed to turn a noble ideal into practical reality via a decade-long process of vigorous public debate, sensible compromise, and ultimately a people's vote, showing that this really was an idea whose time had come. In the early 19th century, the Australian colonies were scattered settlements, each rather introspective, each focused on its own difficulties and challenges. By the mid-19th century, they were 6 self-governing colonies. They were independent, and on many issues they were divided, but they did find common ground.
The journey to federation really started with the campaign against transportation. Free immigration had really taken off in the 1820s and 30s, and the need for convict labour was much less than it was. And large numbers of people saw transportation as a form of white slavery.
This campaign is one of the pivotal moments in all of Australian history because it's one of the first political issues to really unite the colonies of Australasia. You couldn't have a society of convicts voting and deciding what their laws would be. That would be a nightmare. So you had to get rid of that convict stain.
Although a sense of Australianness had developed by the mid-19th century, there were deep divisions between the colonies. Different railway gauges, competing tariffs and separate defence forces kept them fragmented. Rivalries left the colonies exposed and vulnerable. Yet, at the same time, that sense of Australian identity was seeking an outlet.
More and more Australians were born in Australia. They hadn't been born in Britain or elsewhere, and they really came to love their home country. But equally, the world was becoming a more dangerous place, and so the United States had federated, the German states had unified, Italy had come together, and there was a sense that to be secure, you had to be a bigger unit. But there was also a growing sense of Australian identity.
The growing Australian identity coexisted with the fierce rivalry of the great colonial cities.
Awash with gold, by the mid-1880s, Melbourne was booming. Marvellous Melbourne, the second city of the British Empire, with land prices to match London's. This confidence was expressed in grand architecture, none grander than this, the Royal Exhibition Building, and of course, it triggered a great rivalry with Sydney. Sydney felt it was falling behind, but by the late 1880s, it had well and truly caught up. Its economy was booming, its ports were buzzing. But different visions drove these great rivals, and it was those visions that played into federation.
There had been a certain level of unity when Australia was first settled, but it became clear quite quickly that there is this need to have local decisions across such a vast continent. But of course, once the colonies start to divide up, they often become quite fierce competitors with one another, particularly when it comes to sort of trade and economic matters. And that creates all sorts of logistical nightmares.
Paradoxically, out of this rivalry grew the momentum for unity as the colonies began to debate what a single nation might look like. Leading the way was Sir Henry Parkes. He made it his mission to prove the colonies would be stronger together, sparking the debates that would shape a new nation.
Ian Thomas, lovely to talk. You're the great-great-grandson of Henry Parkes, the father of Federation.
I'm one of many. As a kid growing up, I always knew I was a descendant of Henry. We were told that. But over the years, I've learnt so much about the guy. The struggles he had, the results he was able to achieve, the ability to get up one more time when he was knocked down.
From humble beginnings in England, Parkes rose from poverty to politics, eventually founding his own newspaper, The Empire.
So this is the original,
which became the platform for his growing influence.
Inside, he's got his editorial and what else was happening in the world. You know, you need good eyesight.
Incredible.
Because he could publish a paper, he made a name, people listened, he got asked to stand for Parliament.
Henry Parkes ended up serving 5 terms as Premier of New South Wales.
You've studied his life.
Yeah.
You've lived and breathed him as far as a descendant can. What was his conception of Australia?
Land of opportunity. Got here disappointed. Well, no money, no friends is not a good start. He then, turned it into that land of opportunity for himself by working hard and doing things. He could see the big picture of what was necessary. I think it was 1876 he was talking in Melbourne and he just said, we must get some form of connection to join us together. We're all going individual directions.
His call for connection for a federation was formally announced in a New South Wales town on the 24th of October 1889. It's come down to us as the Tenterfield Address.
The great question which we have to consider is whether the time has not now arisen for the creation on this Australian continent of an Australian government and an Australian parliament.
Tenterfield Address was a real shock to a lot of people. His party was actually really upset by this, the Free Trade Party, because he hadn't told them that he was going to introduce this huge new issue onto the political agenda. And they said, we're not particularly happy with this. I mean, this seems like a bit of a distraction.
Captain's call, if you like.
Henry Parkes was able to build a momentum for a united Australia, but the path forward was far from smooth. New South Wales was for free trade. Victoria was protectionist. Queensland, Tasmania and Western Australia feared domination by the larger colonies. South Australia was open to federation but cautious. And when the people were asked to vote, New South Wales was hesitant, rejecting federation at the first referendum. But success finally came.
When you look back, it just screams inevitability and logic, but it wasn't. It was driven by particular people. And I think there was a lot of disinterest in parts of the country, but in the end, the influence of those people, the Victorians, Melburnians, was decisive.
Amid this contest of ideas and colonial interests, one man led the charge to find a resolution. His name, Alfred Deakin.
Tom.
Tony.
How are you? Good to see you.
Well, welcome to Ballara.
Thank you.
Come on in.
Southwest of Melbourne is Alfred Deakin's home. Built in 1907, it's been in the family ever since.
Come in, Tony, and let me show you a few things.
Well, thank you, Tom.
Tom Harley is Deakin's great-grandson.
Let's have a look at this one. What's this? Imperial Conference on Defence.
So this is in 1909. And these are
this document is the property of His Britannic Majesty's government.
Please don't tell them.
I hope they know that we've got it.
Is it breach of the Official Secrets Act?
Exactly right. Yeah.
He was born in 1856 in Melbourne, and that's quite distinct because many of his contemporaries in colonial politics and later in national politics have been born in Britain or elsewhere and come. I think Deakin's modus operandi was to try and bring people together. It was not a combative thing. They would try and find common threads, and he would be very good. He was known as Affable Alfred, of getting people's better spirits aligned and trying to find a common path, often resulting in compromise.
The rivalries between the colonies demanded both vision and compromise. Alongside Alfred Deakin and Henry Parkes was Edmund Barton, a Sydney barrister turned politician. He too was a passionate advocate for federation.
The momentum for federation grew and grew, and through a series of constitutional conventions, through ultimately a series of votes, eventually it all came to pass. And so the constitution that had been hammered out here in Australia in a remarkably democratic way was taken to London.
So by coming together, they could speak with one voice to Britain. And when they came to London to talk about affairs of the empire more broadly, they could speak with a stronger voice.
By now, the colonies had set aside their rivalries and were speaking with one voice to Britain. Unity forged from decades of competition and division. Australia had come of age and was ready to stand on its own 2 feet. Before the Constitution was formalised, the Australian delegation had one final meeting.
In May the 8th 1900. They had a last conference with Chamberlain, the colonial secretary, and they agreed, and they all joined hands when he left the room and danced around the table.
The draft Constitution Bill was then introduced into the House of Commons. After some debate, the bill then moved to the House of Lords.
The Australian colonies were part of the British Empire, and so the legislation was managed here in Australia, building the Imperial Parliament at Westminster in London. The Australian Constitution Act had to pass its way through these chambers, through the Commons, through the House of Lords, and finally to assent at Windsor Castle with Queen Victoria.
In the stillness of this almost empty chamber, a handful of peers, resplendent in their scarlet robes, settled into place. The clerk read the commission, and the Lord Chancellor announced that the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Bill had received royal assent. It was law, and in that moment, a new nation, Australia, was born. When you think of the Federation of Australia, there was no War of Independence as in America. There were no rebellions as there had been in both Upper and Lower Canada. There was no war as there was prior to the Union of South Africa. It was a remarkably peaceful process. What does it say about the Commonwealth of Australia that almost alone amongst the nations of the world, it came into being by such a process?
I think it's about our democratic spirit, our sense of egalitarianism. We're not going to be held back by the past, that we're kind of political innovators, that we came up with a whole new kind of constitutional system, taking the best bits from Britain and the United States, Canada, and making it our own.
January the 1st, 1901, the Commonwealth was proclaimed. Edmund Barton took the oath as our first Prime Minister.
Australia, May 1901. To the foundation of the Commonwealth, the Duke of York was sent by his father, Edward VII, King of Great Britain and the dominions beyond the seas.
A few months later, on the 9th of May, the Duke of Cornwall and York opened the first Parliament in Melbourne's Royal Exhibition Building.
May the 9th, 1901 was the day the first Parliament was opened in the Exhibition Building. May the 9th, 1927 was the day Old Parliament House was opened. May the 9th, 1988 was the day the current Parliament House was opened.
And here he is, the man who later became King George V, opening the first Parliament of Australia. It was the symbolic moment when our country stood proudly on its own. At the National Archives in Canberra, there's facsimile copies of our nation's two most important documents.
And here they are.
Copied in 1912, they have to be protected from direct light and can only be viewed for short periods.
So in this case, we have two documents. The top one is called the Royal Commission of Assent, and this was signed by Queen Victoria on the 9th of July, 1900. The Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act is the smaller document, and this is the act of the British Parliament. And when Queen Victoria signed the Royal Commission of Assent, that basically passed the law.
I mean, Queen Victoria was obviously a monarch of enormous importance. She brought into being the Commonwealth of Australia, a country which, almost alone of the nations, was brought into being by negotiation and discussion, not by conquest, insurrection or revolution. So almost unique is our country, and obviously this document therefore is incredibly special.
Another unique part of our Federation story can be found here at the National Film and Sound Archive.
Stop. That wonderful song, Song of Australia, that came out of South Australia, was one of the songs that was put to the vote in the 1970s as a potential national anthem. And I wasn't really familiar with it when that vote took place, but if I was asked to vote now for the national anthem, I've got to say, I love that tune. Australia, that's how it goes. Australia, Australia.
At last, the nation was united. We were no longer just South Australians or Queenslanders, Victorians or Westralians, New South Welshmen or Tasmanians. We were Australians.
Coming up,
the generation that went through the Great Depression, the worst economic calamity in history, followed by the worst war in history, they wanted a better society.
This is Government House in Canberra. It stands as a symbol of Australia's constitutional link to the monarchy. It's home to the Governor-General, the King's representative here in Australia.
Excellency.
Good morning. Welcome back to Government House.
Thank you for having me.
It's wonderful to have you here.
This morning, I'm in early to see Sam Mostyn, our 28th Governor-General.
And to have Her Majesty, the Wattle Queen, as she was known in this painting.
It's one of my all-time favourites, the young Queen Elizabeth, resplendent in bright yellow.
It's lovely that she welcomes you here today.
Wonderful.
Yeah. I think she winked back. No, she would never wink. She would just smile.
Well, Excellency, thank you. I really appreciate you giving me the time this morning. What do you think is the essence of the Australian character? What is it that's unique and special about us?
Well, I think we are a mighty place. I think we're a mighty democracy. We are increasingly representative of a nation that you don't see around the world much anymore. But it is an extraordinary story, attachment to continent and country from Aboriginal people over tens of thousands of years, the arrival of the British and the establishment of the system of government and parliament, and then the last 50 or 60 years of remarkable migration, refugees, almost 8 million Australians coming to this country in that way.
From the old world, they bring to the new their labour, their arts and sciences, their youth.
Australia's migrant character is without doubt one of our greatest strengths. To explore it, I've brought together 3 remarkable stories of people who've helped to shape our nation. From the arts world, Li Xuing-Sing, the ballet star who fled communist China chasing freedom, and who's now widely known as Mao's last dancer.
Hello, how are you?
Dai Li, a Vietnamese refugee who rose to become a community leader and federal member of parliament. And businessman Anthony Pratt, whose Polish-Jewish family built a global business empire out of nothing.
Why did your family choose Australia, and how did your family cope as newcomers in a strange country?
Well, my grandfather in 1938 in Poland could see what was coming, and so he fled to Australia. The main reason he chose Australia, I suppose, was that it was the furthest country he could think of away from Adolf Hitler.
Well, I mean, I was young, and of course, with the fall of Saigon, as you know, history has shown, there was this huge Vietnamese exodus. My mother just picked up the 3 of us and ran. It was just chaos.
I was born in 1961. I was the 6th of 7 peasant sons. Life was tough. Around the time I was born, tens of millions of people died of starvation across China. It was absolutely beyond belief how tough the peasants lived their lives.
My mother said to me, there's this island called Australia, and she said it had the best education system in the world.
To those arriving, Australia meant opportunity. To Canberra,
it meant securing the nation's future.
No problem facing this country is greater than that of getting people, hundreds of thousands of people, into the Commonwealth each year. Their coming is vital to the future security, growth and development of this nation.
The push for mass migration was not just about growth and prosperity. It was also driven by insecurity and by memories of truly hard times.
The generation that went through the Great Depression, the worst calamity, economic calamity in history, followed by the worst war in history, they wanted a better society.
But even as post-World War II migration transformed the country, it was shaped and restricted by the White Australia policy which, since Federation, had dictated who could call Australia home.
From Britain and the ports of Europe, ships are bringing migrants and new settlers to help fill the vacant spaces and vacant jobs in Australia.
We were White Australia, and we'd just had the hell scared out of us in an Asian war. Asia was changing, and the fall of Singapore had taught us that we no longer could just look to Britain and look to European history. We were involved in a dynamic change in a new region, and so defence became another factor. We have to increase our population for defence, and we have to grow as a nation. We had to populate this country.
Populate or perish, wasn't it?
Populate or perish.
Post-war migration is one of Australia's greatest policy success stories. Almost 2 million migrants arrived between 1945 and 1965. Hundreds of thousands came from non-English speaking countries.
Australia must populate or perish.
Even though this transformed Australia, it's now hard to imagine this country without them. Just look at the Snowy hydroelectric scheme, a gargantuan undertaking for its day. Possibly our greatest ever infrastructure project, and only made possible by the hard work and sheer numbers of a determined, mostly immigrant workforce. And along with the workers came a renewed entrepreneurial spirit.
My grandfather, when he got to Australia, started an orange orchard in Shepparton, Victoria, picking oranges and putting them into wooden crates, when it occurred to him that corrugated boxes would be better than wooden crates to put oranges into.
And for the refugees, Australia was a lifeline. Many had fled war and persecution in their homelands, and coming here meant the chance not only to start again, but to build a safer, better life for their families.
Refugees were to Vietnam as inevitable as casualties are to war.
We got accepted for resettlement here at the end of 1979 and landed in Ferrymeadow Hostel.
And what was your early experience of Australia? What are your first and subsequent early recollections of this country?
Well, having lived in refugee camps, I just wanted to be somewhere where it's settled, somewhere where it's safe. Because we were in camps, never travelled outside of Vietnam, so when we got to Australia, I remember looking around at the airport and I thought, oh my God, everybody was white and they looked the same.
In just a few decades,
Hello, how are you?
how things have changed.
I'm just out with Di today and she's showing me a bit of contemporary Cabramatta. I probably haven't been here for 30 years, so it's changed a bit.
So what you doing now? Before you Prime Minister?
Before I was Prime Minister, now good on you, well done. Thank you very much, I really appreciate that. Well look, like all ex-Prime Ministers, I'm trying not to be a nuisance to my successors and I'm trying to be of more value than not to the country. That's the challenge. That's a challenge for an ex-Prime Minister. It's an impressive butcher shop there.
Oh yeah, this is a very busy butcher shop here.
I love being an Australian.
Hello, how are you? Lovely to see you.
I see myself as an Australian first, and of course, very privileged to have the background of being a Vietnamese refugee. Australia opened its doors for us and accepted us, gave us the opportunity to rebuild. So I thought, how can I thank Australia?
That gratitude became Dai Li's driving force, leading her from local council to deputy mayor and now to the floor of the Australian Parliament.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for welcoming me into this place. I feel blessed that I'm able to stand here today in the 47th Parliament of Australia. I'm humbled that my community has chosen me to represent them. It will be hard to express in words how grateful I am for this unbelievable opportunity and tremendous responsibility, but I will try. The people of Fowler are my people. Our story belongs to every Australian. Mr. Speaker, thank you for your time.
Hey,
how are you? Biết ai không?
Well, you're right. It is incredibly multi-ethnic, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And I would say that
Thank you.
just in this part of Cabramatta, I would say 90% would be born overseas, wouldn't
Yes,
they?
yes, yes.
Tony Abbott. I remember him. He was my Prime Minister.
Good on you. Thank you so much.
From the toughest beginnings, Australia has given people from every corner of the globe a fair go, a safe home, and the chance to get ahead.
No, my grandfather's original name was Pshititsky. He changed it to Pratt. We had a single factory in Reservoir, Victoria, and then my father grew it spectacularly.
In Australia today, the Pratt family businesses employ around 7,000 people, and in the United States, nearly 20,000 more.
If you compare doing business in America with doing business in Australia, if you compare manufacturing in America with manufacturing in Australia, what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses?
I think that, for a start, there is no better country to manufacture in than Australia. I think the people of Australia are, incredibly productive, and I think that in terms of rule of law and most importantly, the institutions to protect private property, they are the pillars, the bedrock of what makes Australia a great place to manufacture.
So you're obviously extremely optimistic about the future here in Australia.
Absolutely. It's a great country, giving everyone a fair go.
Australia has long been a place where people from all walks of life come to belong and succeed. Few journeys reflect that better than Lee Swing Sing's.
Lee, thank you. I really appreciate you talking to me. I think that you embody the modern Australian migrant success story. You came here from, via the United States, but you came here from China. And then how your thinking changed over time.
From a very early age, I remember that we grew up, we always had a little mouse, a little red book in our pockets. We have to read, memorize every word of it. And that was our Bible in life. That was supposed to give you all the answers in life, all the happiness you desire. And it was a complete, total political brainwash, basically. Education was really a second thought because survival was the primary aim of the people.
At the height of Communist China's brutal rule, in what you might call a sliding doors moment, an 11-year-old Lee Swing Sing was plucked from a life of poverty and hunger to study at Madame Mao's Dance Academy in Beijing.
And I was among one of the 44 kids that year in 1972, amongst millions of kids across China. We were taken to Beijing to study ballet, and that started my artistic journey.
At 18, on a cultural scholarship to America, Lee saw for the first time what life in a free country looks like.
For me, to experience that sense of freedom, which I had never truly experienced for the first 18 years of my life was something so endearing, something so special, so powerful. As an artist, you want to dance with total freedom. And that was the first time to be able to listen to Chopin music, to dance with Tchaikovsky, which is those kind of music were banned in China when I grew up.
Lee had fallen in love with freedom and democracy, and in time, with an Australian dancer too. And the rest, as they say, is history.
The day I chose Australia as my new home, that's the day I really felt I'm part of Australia, not just enjoy the protection of Australia, but also I want to be part of the Australian culture. I don't just want to be a bystander and to enjoy the benefits, but not making my contributions.
That desire to belong and to contribute feeds into a bigger national question. How do we weave so many different backgrounds into one shared Australian story? While unrestrained immigration can bring challenges, our nation has been profoundly shaped by those who've joined Team Australia and contributed so positively to our country.
Wherever I go, people say, can we just start talking about why we do care about each other? And can we just be a bit more, can we be kinder to ourselves about this great story and where it is going?
As my visit to the Governor-General draws to a close, one more picture with the Wattle Queen. From national symbols to community ones, new Australians have built their own monuments to freedom and democracy in their adopted home.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It sure is.
Liberty, democracy. Yeah.
And this was put up by the Vietnamese community,
Indo-Chinese, which means the groups that are supportive of Taiwan. So brought together funds to build this as a symbol of freedom and democracy. Right. It was quite controversial and was built back in the 1990s.
And look, there's a koala.
Yes.
Koalas and kangaroos.
Yeah, koalas and kangaroos. Symbolism of Australian icons. The world is for us to share and to respect.
Cabramatta is a snapshot of modern Australia. Multi-ethnic? Absolutely. Multicultural? Up to a point. Because it's not where you come from that counts, it's the values that you live by. And here, taking advantage of the fair go that Australia offers are people who are having a go, building businesses, starting families, creating a community. That's the spirit that binds us. That's the Australia we believe in.
On the next episode of Australia, a History, our journey continues.
Our acts of genius has been to civilise capitalism, it's been to honour the common man, and it's been to foster an extraordinary and inclusive democracy. They will put us in great stead for the future.
From ancient land to great democracy, former Prime Minister Tony Abbott offers a fresh and honest account of our rich history and how it shaped modern Australia. On sale now.
In this final episode,
Monash puts it all together.
We remember and honour our heroes and the sacrifices they made.
When the cause has been just and the need urgent, you won't have to ask Australia twice.
Acknowledge our great institutions and the leaders who showed the way.
Recognise the injustices of the past.
And we look to the future and what lies ahead for our great nation. This is the Menin Gate in Ypres, Belgium. It's a Great War memorial to some 55,000 soldiers of the former British Empire and its allies who lost their lives and who remain missing. Each and every night, at 8 o'clock sharp, the main road is closed and the town falls silent. Buglers sound the last post. It's a powerful reminder that even far from home, Australians who made the ultimate sacrifice are commemorated with honour.
Well, Peter, a former Governor-General, a former Chief of the Defence Staff, a former Head of the Army, a combat soldier and a Military Cross winner, it's wonderful to be with you. Let's talk a bit about Australia's military history. What was the spirit in which Australia went to the Great War?
I suspect that it was of great loyalty and concern. Loyalty to the Empire as we were then, and a sense of disquiet that these big events were going to interfere with our forebears, the history and culture that we sort of inherited, and we couldn't have that. But there was also a disquiet that where we were in this vast expanse of Indo-Pacific, we were somewhat by ourselves. So this was us saying, we will of course help there because our expectation is you'll be part of our protective umbrella should we ever need you.
When war was declared in August 1914, Australians instinctively rallied to the mother country. For us then, it was a simple choice between British freedom or German militarism. As the then Labor leader Andrew Fisher put it, Australia will stand beside the mother country to the last man and the last shilling. Of course, no one then knew just how horrendous the cost would be. Still, it was the crucible in which our national consciousness was formed. It was the supreme challenge that we abundantly met.
Just reflect for a moment on the basic statistics. We then had a population of fewer than 5 million, yet our enlistment rate from the 2.5 million men, 380 to 400,000 enlisted, patriotic men who saw the future of their country as being fundamentally bound up with what happened on the Western Front.
The Great War was a dreadful milestone that announced our arrival to the wider world, but at stupendous cost. 155,000 were wounded and 60,000 never came home.
In today's terms, that would be somewhere between 300 and 400,000 of a population of 27 billion, and you can't in any way understate the trauma that inflicted upon Australians.
Australia's first major test in the Great War came at Gallipoli in what is now modern-day Turkey. Among the cliffs and chaos, our soldiers showed the world and themselves what Australians were made of. The courage, mateship and resilience forged here by our volunteer soldiers became part of our national character.
One of the reasons why the Anzac legend emerged so powerfully from that conflict was that people needed a narrative, they needed a story about the war that invested the loss of their men, be it their fathers, sons, husbands, with some meaning. And the Anzac legend has always tended to commemorate the men who fought rather than say that their deaths and injuries were futile.
Gallipoli was indeed the prism through which we see everything else. These people who had no idea, in the main, about war. The vast majority of the Anzacs, Australians and New Zealanders, were innocents. And yet, in the face of a tremendous defence by the Turks, we still landed, still climbed the heights, still looked after each other, and were there clinging by our fingernails during what was a doomed campaign.
After Gallipoli, the Anzacs were sent here, to France and Belgium, to defend the Western Front. This is Windmill Hill at Pozières. Today it's a solemn memorial. But in 1916, it was the scene of unimaginable loss as the Allies fought to push back the advancing German forces. It's what we know today as the Battle of the Somme.
So this is really chosen as the place where the British and French will mount a major offensive, the biggest of the war, to push the Germans back, take key ground and demonstrate that the Western Front is alive, the British and the French are going to push the Germans out of France and going to win the war, and so it's aimed as a decisive offensive.
One of the things that I think is hard to grasp, Nick, is that 3 divisions is about 40,000 men or more, and to have 3 Australian divisions basically within a couple of miles of this spot, they're fighting, they're resting. It would have been crawling with men, and at the same time under ceaseless bombardment, raked with machine gun fire. How did anyone live through that?
It is a wonder. I mean, you have this strange phenomenon of the empty battlefield, where you have thousands of men in trenches and holes and shell holes. Yet, of course, if you look over the top of the trenches, you can't see anyone.
The toll was catastrophic. Tens of thousands of our troops had been killed, and reinforcements were badly needed. The recruitment campaign simply couldn't provide enough men. So Prime Minister Billy Hughes pushed for conscription, taking the debate to the people. Twice they voted, and twice the answer was no.
It is one of the most remarkable examples of democracy in wartime. People were torn apart, communities were torn apart by those debates. But the fact that we could have such a very nuanced and sophisticated debate about the rights of the citizen and what was the appropriate balance between state power and citizen rights. I mean, we had that in the middle of war. That is a remarkable episode in Australian political history.
The nation stayed divided on conscription, but our soldiers fought on. Volunteers, all of them. And under General John Monash, the Australian forces went on to achieve their greatest victories.
Monash was a thinking officer. This was a fellow who said, we're in the grinder here. I have to work out how to preserve the troops and get the mission done. And he works on that. By 1917, 18, he is a past master at what he's doing.
It's here, on the Western Front, that Monash revolutionised the battlefield.
And Hamel, Monash, puts it all together. What you have is essentially a modern combined arms battle, where a variety of different elements are going to be working together, are going to be linked together in a very sophisticated way. The artillery, the infantry, the armour, air power, use of smoke, and this really becomes the kind of prototype for the kind of offensives we'll see later in the year. And after the battle, everyone looks at it and says, this is how you do it.
There was a real Australian blitzkrieg to subdue the opposition. He said a modern warfare plan is like an orchestral piece, every piece of the orchestra playing its part. The aeroplanes, the tanks, the artillery. He could perfect things. He planned the attack on Hamel to last 90 minutes. It lasted 94.
The Great War was meant to be the war to end all wars, Our leaders wanted to create a land fit for heroes to live in. But barely a decade later, just as our nation began to recover, another crisis struck. The Great Depression, a decade of immense social distress. It left deep scars for a generation of Australians that already knew terrible hardship. And then, in 1939, the world was at war once more. But even with a greatly depleted armed force, Australia did not hesitate. We stood with Britain as we had before, and we fought for freedom.
Here is the Prime Minister of Australia, the Right Honourable R.G. Menzies.
Fellow Australians, it is my melancholy duty to inform you officially that in consequence of a persistence by Germany in her invasion of Poland, Great Britain has declared war upon her, and that as a result, Australia is also at war.
But this time, the danger came much closer to home. Australian troops again set off into battle.
Australians were again heading off as an expeditionary force, much like happened in World War I. We were thinking we were going over to Europe, but then diverted into the Middle East, and we performed magnificently there.
At Bardia, we won the first major Allied victory of the war, taking thousands of Italian prisoners. In Tobruk, our diggers held firm for 8 long months, ultimately denying Rommel his victory. We also fought hard in Crete, Syria and Lebanon. But all the while, Japan was aggressively expanding, preparing to attack in the Pacific.
Menzies was very troubled by the threat that Japan was posing. He still finally agrees to send Australian troops to the Middle East, and 27,000 Australian men fought with the RAF, flying over Germany and other air operations in Europe. Certainly our original commitments in World War II, I think, were driven by the same assumptions that if Britain fell and the Empire fell, then we were profoundly vulnerable.
Late in 1941, Japan struck at Pearl Harbor, reshaping the entire war. Suddenly, Australia itself was under threat.
Men and women of Australia, we are at war with Japan.
This is John Curtin. At the time, he'd been Prime Minister for just 2 months.
That has happened because the Japanese naval and air forces launched an unprovoked attack on British and United States territory. Because our vital interests are imperiled, and because the rights of free people in the whole Pacific are assailed.
Japan then invaded Malaya and advanced towards Singapore, Britain's so-called fortress in the east.
We learnt Britain could no longer protect us. We knew we had a new ally to rely on, the United States of America. We recognised that Asia was undergoing extraordinary change and we had to be a part of it. I think Singapore changed the way we looked at ourselves, the empire and the world.
The fall of Singapore was Britain's greatest ever military disaster, and for Australia, an utter catastrophe. 15,000 of our soldiers were taken prisoner. For decades, Australia had placed its faith in Britain's defence planning and the so-called Singapore strategy. So its collapse was a huge shock to our nation, as well as a brutal wake-up call. The war was no longer far away. It was on our doorstep.
Darwin has had 2 fairly heavy Japanese bombing raids in 2 days.
Gary, it was an absolutely savage attack. Same aircraft carriers, same Japanese pilots, same Japanese commanders attacked Darwin as attacked Pearl Harbor. You'd think we would have been better prepared.
Japanese had the element of surprise. The first bomb dropped at 9:58 a.m. and split the wharf in 2 and killed 22 wharfies, and it was on. And everyone was just pandemonium. There was more tonnage of bombs dropped on Darwin than Pearl Harbor. The same plane, same pilot, same aircraft carriers.
There were some 90 Japanese bombing raids on northern Australia, from Broome in the west to Townsville in the east. Hundreds of people lost their lives. Midget subs even made it as far as Sydney Harbour. At the same time, the Japanese ground attack was making its way south through Papua New Guinea. Outnumbered and undersupplied, Australian soldiers fought hand-to-hand along the Kokoda track, ultimately repelling the Japanese forces. It was one of our most desperate campaigns and one of our greatest victories.
My view of Australian soldiers goes back to my own family, where my granddad was in World War I and World War II, and my dad was in World War II. And I thought that they were, as a class of people, a type of Australian, they were giants. Not physically, but in their spirit. And so it was with trepidation I joined their ranks.
In 1969, a young Peter Cosgrove deployed to Vietnam. It was a conflict that created division at home when, for the first time, depending on their birthdays, young Australian men were conscripted to fight overseas.
The thing that really got me was it was almost indistinguishable between a private soldier regular army and a private soldier conscript. These Nashos had reluctantly joined. Sometimes they were enthusiastic, but, reluctantly. And then they got stuck into it. And they were all of one company. I loved it. And I thought, wow. And I'd say they were the equal to the Anzacs before, and that's biased on my part, but those young men were magnificent.
Talk to me, Peter, about Indigenous service personnel and what must it have taken for Aboriginal men in the early years of the last century, some of whom were massacre survivors, to sign up to fight for king and country?
I think it was their own expression of worth. They saw all the white guys joining up and going off to fight for a cause that probably was obscure, but they said, I'm a warrior, I'm brave, I'll go and do this and show them my worth. And it didn't take long for their comrades in arms long to say, he's one of the team. I had Indigenous soldiers in my platoon in Vietnam, and they were fantastic.
3 decades on, Peter Cosgrove led his final deployment, commanding Australia's forces in East Timor. It was the first time Australia had led a major multinational force. Thousands of our troops ensured order after the small nation voted for independence from Indonesia.
We'd been planning an operation, if needed, to go in and rescue the UN and those locals who'd worked for the UN who might be targeted in some kind of outbreak of homicidal violence. So it was to go in looking enormously confident and, if I could put it this way, very highly capable. And the thing we got was a very powerful mandate from the United Nations Security Council. We got their unprecedented authority to use violence if we needed to. And as it turned out, we managed to keep the violence right down.
The East Timor operation showed that Australia could plan, lead and deliver security in our region. Then, just 18 months later, the world was changed forever.
This early stage, we believe that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center.
September 11. And for the first time since 1951, ANZUS was formally invoked, the Australia, New Zealand and United States Security Pact. Standing shoulder to shoulder, we joined the mission in the war against terror. Our troops fought in Afghanistan and Iraq. For Australia, This was about defending global democracy and the rules-based order and standing by our friends when it mattered most.
Words aren't very adequate, but they are a sign that we feel for our American friends, that we will stand by them, we will help them, we will support actions they take to properly retaliate.
How important is it that Australia stand with our traditional allies, our democratic partners, in the various conflicts of the world?
Well, it's important in that we have a history that we can exploit. We can say to our American friends and our British friends and forebears that we've been with you. Every time it's been really important, we've been there. We can say when the cause has been just and the need urgent, you won't have to ask Australia twice.
Coming up,
we've managed as a country to resolve our political disputes through our political institutions, whatever the stresses may have been on those. And to me, that's one of the great stories of Australia.
One constant since 1788 has been the presence of the Crown. Of course, it's a different Crown today than in George III's time, and in Australia the Crown is represented by the Governor-General. Still, it's a form of servant leadership and it has served us well, and I hope it never changes.
For generations, Australians have welcomed the royal family with great enthusiasm. In 1954, Queen Elizabeth made a historic tour. And in 1966, a fresh-faced Prince Charles arrived, spending 2 happy terms at the Geelong Grammar School. Australia has never been too far away for our royals.
I must say how much I have appreciated the kind and generous welcome everywhere and every day. We have been delighted to see the happy and smiling faces of the men, women and children of Australia.
And with the passing of our beloved Queen, a new reign and a new monarch to carry us into the future.
Constitutional monarchy is the best form of government because we have all the benefits of democracy while at the same time reserving just a little bit of our official system for someone who is above and beyond politics and is invariably a person of substance.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.
Since Federation, the Crown has been represented in Australia by the Governor-General.
Excellency, I wonder if you could just talk a bit about the role of the monarchy in Australia as a symbol of unity above and beyond politics.
I mean, that certainly is the most important thing about my role. So the Governor-General has and always must be above politics. I have no politics, I have no policies to offer, I have no money to dispense. Most people don't understand that the King would never call me to offer advice on how I would do my job or exercise those powers, and I would never contact him through his office to ask for that advice. But this is a uniquely Australian set of arrangements that is underpinned by the continuity and stability of the Crown, but exercised by Australians in this role who are always chosen by Australian Prime Ministers.
Sir Peter Cosgrove understands the role only too well.
I think a Governor-General who gets out and about across the Australian community has got his or her heart in the right place. The community, every one of them needs to know they count. That's not just their vote that is important, it's their being.
While the Governor-General stands above politics, it's great leadership within politics that has steered our nation's course from the very beginning.
I have a great admiration for the founding fathers. They pulled the country together. They established the federation. They established the constitutional and political basis for the new country. There were 5 fundamental ideas that defined the new nation. They were the tariff and trade protectionism, the White Australia policy, the concept of wage egalitarianism and centralised wage fixation, the idea that the state would be recruited to help the individual, and then finally imperial benevolence, a recognition the nation couldn't defend itself. Just a few million people on this continent, we had to look to great and powerful friends. And these were great visionary concepts which underpinned and created the sense of the Australian nation, and they lasted a long time.
John, as Australia's second longest serving Prime Minister, you haven't just studied history, you've made history. How does it feel to have been someone who has shaped our country's history more than anyone alive today?
Well, I wouldn't make that claim myself. It's nice of you to put it that way. Look, I felt incredibly privileged to be Prime Minister of Australia for almost 12 years. It was a great honour because it's a great country. It is the best in the world because there is a decent balance about Australian society that's hard to find in other countries.
And that balance hasn't come by chance. It's been built through generations of social, economic and political reform.
The miracle of Australia's democracy, that we find ourselves in 2025, the 12th largest economy in the world, a peaceful, prosperous, safe country, a land of opportunity still, not by some miracle, but because there were people who came before us who shaped it, and we need to be proud of that. Ensure that young people and old people and all in between have an appreciation of what's come before us and the hard work and aspiration and optimism that our forebears put into building this country.
In 1902, Australia was one of the very first countries in the world to give women suffrage, that is, the right to vote and to stand for Parliament.
We had early on adopted universal male suffrage, and then by the early 20th century, universal female suffrage. Australia was incredibly liberal in that respect.
It was the federation settlement achieved by our early federal parliaments that laid the foundations for a democracy strong enough to withstand war, hardship and division.
Prime Minister Hughes went to the election in May 1917. He'd lost the referendum on conscription, but he won the election on a win-the-war ticket. So the Australian population had the capacity, I think, to hold a lot of conflicting ideas in balance. And throughout the Great Depression and the 2 World Wars, we kept having elections. So for all the contestation and anger and frustration and violence, we've managed as a country to resolve our political disputes through our political institutions, whatever the stresses may have been on those. And to me, that's one of the great stories of Australian history.
In 1939, when the Second World War broke out, Robert Menzies was Prime Minister. 2 years later, Labor's John Curtin took over and led Australia through its darkest days. He made the historic pivot to America, reshaping our alliances and further developing our place in the world.
Cabinet today directed the War Cabinet for the complete mobilisation and the complete ordering of all the resources, human and material, in this Commonwealth for the defence of this Commonwealth.
After Curtin's untimely death, Ben Chifley took over and set about remodelling an exhausted nation. Labor's agenda extended to housing, banking, immigration and infrastructure, while former Prime Minister Menzies languished in the political wilderness.
He'd been Prime Minister 39 to 41 and had to resign from office after losing the support of independents in his minority government. It's the middle of World War II. He's reflecting on what direction Australia should take.
But during the last few years, socialism in Australia has come off the bookshelves and has become a hard, practical political program.
He articulates what at that time is sort of the modern day manifestation of Australian liberalism, and it's encapsulated around the idea of an individual, their freedom of speech, their freedom of religion, but their duties to their family, a high regard for the power of education as a transformational thing in your life to broaden your mind, not just so you can get a great job at the end, and that's all very well and good, but so you can be an independent critical thinker.
Suppose the people of Australia accept the socialist objective, not only in relation to political programs, but in relation to constitutional power, all power to Canberra. How would we like to be living in a country where the state was all powerful?
And Robert Menzies fought back, returning to office in 1949, bringing with him his own bold suite of reforms.
You have given us not only an enormous majority, but an enormous task.
Among them, universities were expanded, roads and dams were built, alliances were strengthened, and for the first time, all Aboriginal people were clearly given the right to vote in federal elections. Menzies presided over an explosion in Australia's prosperity, with a middle class and the great Australian dream of home ownership.
The Liberal Party believes that every worthwhile Australian wants to own his own home, choose his own job, run his own business, make financial headway and bank his earnings where he wishes to bank them.
The idea of your home as being a place where you raise a family, you have a stake in the ground, that little piece of earth you own right there, but also a stake in your community, a stake in your country, and that connection to country which it drives patriotism and that urge to defend it.
Menzies would become our longest-serving Prime Minister, 18 years in total. After Menzies came Harold Holt and the hugely significant 1967 referendum. Australian voters were asked if Aboriginal people should be counted and if Canberra should have the power to make laws for them.
And I feel that the time has come when Australia can no longer tolerate legal racial discrimination against its Indigenous people.
In an extraordinary show of support, the yes vote came in at over 90%.
We cannot help but wonder, why have it taken the white Australians just on 200 years to recognise us as a race of people?
But then Australia changed course. After 23 years, the Liberal-led coalition lost at the ballot box.
Men and women of Australia, it's time for a new government.
In 1972, a much more progressive Gough Whitlam swept to power. He moved fast, launching, some say, the most ambitious agenda for change since Federation.
Gough Whitlam, he did the Conservatives in power for decades. Whitlam came along, changed it. He attempted big things.
Universal healthcare, free university education, land rights, the end of conscription. Australia under Whitlam was a tumultuous experience. And then we endured the greatest constitutional crisis our country has ever seen.
The government was totally disorganised. Whitlam had no idea how to run a cabinet.
Well, may we say, God save the Queen. God save because nothing will save the Governor-General.
After Whitlam's turbulence came Malcolm Fraser and a steadier hand. And then, in 1983, Labor would rise to power once more.
Let's look at Bob Hawke and Paul Keating. I think Bob Hawke is undoubtedly Australia's greatest ever Labor Prime Minister. And I think that Paul Keating was a remarkably creative politician. What do you think?
During the 1980s, I was very close to both Bob Hawke and Paul Keating.
I tell you what, any boss who sacks anyone for not turning up today is a bum.
Now, the way I'd put it is this. Hawke and Keating were not prisoner to Labor dogma, but they believed in Labor principles. Now, this was, if you like, the perfect arrangement for a reform period, because what they said was, well, if you're true Labor, you believe in economic growth, you believe in a dynamic economy, and you believe in economic justice, you believe in a land of opportunity, a land of egalitarianism. Now, they believed in all those things, but they said the old policies aren't working. The Labor dogma needs to be thrown out, and they threw it out. They were phenomenal politicians. They always praised Gough, but they were appalled by the mistakes and blunders of the Whitlam government. So therefore, the priority, the balance with Hawke and Keating was discontinuity with Whitlam. All the time they were thinking, where did Whitlam go wrong? We're not going to do that. We're going to correct.
That they did, by floating the dollar, reducing tariffs, introducing compulsory superannuation. Then there was Mabo and the Native Title Act, undeniably leaving us with important benefits.
The non-Aboriginal people of Australia will recognise the injustices of the past.
Begins, I think, with an act of recognition. Recognition that it was we who did the dispossessing.
Now, the fundamental correction they made was, they said, if you want to be a genuine reformer and change the country, you've got to govern for a long period of time. No mad, crazy reformist rush. That doesn't work. So Hawke and Keating came to put down governing roots, and they did. They governed for 5 terms. And they calculated if you want to really change a country, you've got to govern for a reasonably long period of time.
I've always passionately believed that all power came from the public, every last morsel of it, and it's the nation's perfect right to decide who they want to govern it. I take this opportunity to congratulate John Howard. I wish him and his government well. This is a great country with a great future, and it deserves a government that'll live up to it.
The man who followed Keating would become our second longest serving Prime Minister.
The government that I will lead will be a government not only for the people who voted for us, but also for the people who voted against us.
John Howard brought a new wave of badly needed reforms.
I don't want to be a desk-bound Prime Minister.
There was the GST, gun control after Port Arthur, a stronger US alliance, and protection of our borders. But like the leader of any government, it wasn't all plain sailing.
I got into a lot of trouble once over Asian migration. I mean, all I was arguing for was that if you were undertaking a big change in the ethnic mix of the country, you had to do it in a way that preserved social cohesion. And I think the worst thing I said was that if it looks as though the pace of change is going too quickly, you might have to slow it down in the interest of social cohesion. And naturally the other side has said, I was a terrible racist. I was nothing of the kind.
From Menzies to Whitlam, Hawke, Keating and Howard, reform has shaped modern Australia. But today, in a more divided nation, lasting reform has become much harder to achieve.
Australia was an easier country to govern in those days. Why is that? Well, I think the fundamental reason is that Australia is a more fractured country now. Australia is a more divided country. We don't agree on so many fundamental things. The culture is fragmented. The culture is being pulled apart. And when a country can't agree on fundamentals, on fundamental issues about principle and culture, then it's going to be much harder to govern.
The Australian people will ultimately support something, a big reform, if it satisfies two conditions. The first condition is that it must be good for Australia. And the second condition is that it's fair, that it doesn't trample on the needy. It's next to impossible to propose major reforms of that kind from opposition.
How do you think today's leaders measure up? Present company excluded, of course.
Of course. I think it is very hard to be a leader today with the pressures of 24/7 media cycle. I mean, that is not something that Robert Menzies had to deal with. But I do feel like we haven't had that clarity of vision for a while. These leaders who stand up and you declare what your vision for Australia is and what you stand for. You know, I stand for this and I don't stand for that. These are my red lines and these are my core principles. If you're clear about your principles, people will get a measure of you and know where you're going.
After the break,
we are all a part of that flag, and that's what Australians need to know.
Let's learn the right lessons from the past and make the most of what we have.
it's been an epic journey delving into Australia's history. I've travelled tens of thousands of kilometres, talked to dozens of people.
Welcome back to Government House.
Thank you.
Here they are.
Don't be nervous, mate.
And met amazing characters.
We're going to hallelujah.
But there is one voice that I'm yet to hear from. Our younger generations, our future.
Tony, I'd love to hear about your book.
Well, thanks, Bree. For a long time now, I've thought that one of the big problems with contemporary Australia is that we've become amnesiacs about our history. This book is designed to give people a chance to know more and ultimately to appreciate more what's made our country the way it is. And
I'm taking tea with three 20-something-year-old women. We're across the harbour from where our first fleet landed.
And what did your school tell you about the 26th of January 1788 and subsequently?
From school, it was Invasion Day. It was depicted as the moment in time when the British colonial settler state was planted in Australia and the beginning of Indigenous oppression. But of course, the story is far better than that, and the principles of equality, of tolerance, of freedom, the rule of law, parliamentary democracy, all the really great things about Australia, that part of our story was never told.
The view and the perspective that I got of Australian history was very much one that was characterised by shame, of guilt. I think most people in my year level walked away from humanities and history class feeling exceptionally guilty for what happened to Indigenous Australians, and they felt personally responsible for it.
I think this whole Invasion Day mindset is ultimately corrosive of our unity and corrosive of our cohesion as a country and as a nation. We can't change the past. Let's learn the right lessons from the past and make the most of what we have.
There is a real problem with parts of our education system that tell a very dismal story of our nation and don't instil a sense of pride in the magnificent achievements of Australia. And I do think it's critical in the days ahead that we do encourage a positive telling of our national story.
Ramona, tell us what your schooling imparted to you about the past of this country.
So my school is a Jewish school. So each time we think about Australia's history, we are so thankful for Australia allowing my great-grandparents who immigrated here after the Holocaust with nothing and nothing but hope. And they came here and they built an incredible lifestyle, and that's because Australia gave them a fair go. And they worked hard and they succeeded. And that's when I think about Australia and its history.
As my journey nears its end, it's time for me to go back to school. This is the Thomas Hassell Anglican College in Sydney's southwest.
Well, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. Good on you.
I've dropped in on the Year 11 Modern History class.
I think with Australia Day, it's kind of a reminder of how what happened when the First Fleet came. It reminds us that, there have been bad things that happened towards the Aboriginal people, but if it wasn't for how history went, we wouldn't be here today, we wouldn't have this country we have today. But I think it's best to keep it as Australia Day because it marks a part of history.
How important is migration to Australia? Who wants to offer a thought on that?
I think it's pretty important. Australia is a very diverse country, and we're known for having, again, we're very diverse, and so I think allowing people in and out the country is very important.
What was the significance of Anzac Day?
It was when the Australians, they sacrificed for our country, and it's a day we're supposed to honour them for what they did for our country. And if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't really be here, to be honest.
On 3 to get big smile. 1, 2, 3.
I was at a school in Western Sydney, and of the youngsters, the person who seemed to know our history best was a young man whose parents were from Zimbabwe.
Yes.
And he certainly didn't look like your typical Australian of 50 years ago, but he was obviously a very proud Australian. And
he is. I love your example of the young man you've met in Western Sydney, because he and those children and young people who are the children of people who came here, they are the modern Australia.
No matter where they were born, we've met some truly proud Australians on our journey back in time.
I love Australia. I love Australia's history. I love Australia's heritage. We learn from what mistakes we made in the past, and we become better human beings. We become better societies.
And make a selfless contribution to making this country what it is.
You have convicts coming here, you have gold rush seekers coming here, you have wave after wave of migrants, and they're coming here because they believe in the future and they're reaching for the future. To have that in your national story, in the basic DNA of what made us who we are as a nation today, I can't think of something that you would treasure more.
we shouldn't be selective about our past, and we shouldn't be embarrassed about all the things that have contributed to the Australia that we live in and have every reason to be proud of. We do have an Indigenous heritage, we do have a British foundation, and we do have an immigrant character. Our laws, our institutions, our essential civic values, so much that's best in our culture has come from that British foundation, and the character of this country is essentially an Anglo-Celtic culture and fundamentally a Judeo-Christian ethos.
You do look at some of the things we've done in our history and you learn from them. There are core values, our political system, our legal system, It's something that we should be incredibly proud of, that, my God, you also celebrate and commemorate your strengths and your achievements because they inspire you for the future.
And then there's our national symbol, our great unifying flag. It's an enduring marker that every Australian can stand behind and be proud of.
The Australian flag does represent us all. The Southern Cross, those stars, that star formation, that is representative of Jukurba, of dreaming. That represents us Aboriginal people in the flag. We are all a part of that flag, and that's what Australians need to know.
When I ran for Australia and I won my Olympic gold medal, every medal that I've won, I've never carried the Aboriginal flag. I've always carried the Australian flag, because the Australian flag is the flag of this country.
I think Australia is an extraordinary and special country. There have been a lot of mistakes, but nonetheless, the achievements have been extraordinary on this continent where one's consciousness is formed by the physical world. The light, the beach, the sea, the bush, the landscape, all this is fundamental to the Australian character. Just as it's fundamental to the Australian character that one of our acts of genius has been to civilise capitalism, it's been to honour the common man, it's been to say that the ordinary man is as good as his boss, and it's been to foster an extraordinary and inclusive democracy. These are great achievements, and I think they will put us in great stead for the future.
From 1788 on, generations of Australians have lived in hope and confidence. Hope that they can build for themselves, and especially for their children, a better life, and confidence that this was a country where you would get a fair go, especially if you were prepared to have a go first. That's the spirit that we must build on, especially if we are to remain a country and a people whose best days are ahead of us.
From ancient land to great democracy, former Prime Minister Tony Abbott offers a fresh and honest account of our rich history and how it shaped modern Australia. On sale now.